Coming up on USL Pro Weekly. The first weekend is in the books, as is the first victory for the LA Galaxy II. We talk with Charlie Rugg about scoring the first goal in club history. The Sacramento Republic make their debut in LA this weekend. We talk with Justin Braun about the expansion franchise's hopes for 2014. Charleston and Orlando take a point apiece. We look ahead to their matchups this weekend with Richmond and Pittsburgh. All of this and much more on the latest edition of USL Pro Weekly. Welcome in to the latest edition of USL Pro Weekly. My name's Nicholas Murray. Very pleased to be joined this week by David Wagner. David, welcome in.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
Definitely. I know you've had a decent amount of travel over the last couple of weeks, but good to have you back in the office, good to have you back in the studio, and a really good weekend of action that we just got treated to the opening weekend of USL Pro, starting off with the LA Galaxy II, who take their inaugural win in their inaugural outing, a 3-1 win against the Orange County Blues. Kenny Walker, goal and an assist. Charlie Rugg scores the first goal in franchise history. Anything in particular stand out to you as far as their inaugural performance?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think coming in, there was obviously a lot of questions. This is the first time you have an MLS team essentially fielding a side in USL Pro. What's it going to look like? How are they going to play? Is it just going to be a miniature version of the first team? Is it just going to be a bunch of academy kids? I think that they proved that they definitely belong in this league with a very comprehensive performance. For me, what stood out the most was that they looked like a team out there. They were playing really well. They were all very familiar with themselves, and I know that they've been practicing for quite a while too. They started training when the first team started training, so they've had a really long preseason, and they just looked really together as a unit. Very impressive team performance from LA.
I think definitely some of the preseason games that they were able to have together helped. I mean, going down and playing the Fresno Fuego, a very good PDL franchise, and then playing the Galaxy full side. They lost that game, but I still think playing that game as part of their preseason helped develop that chemistry. And you look at some of the names on the roster. We already mentioned Walker and Rugg, but you've got a guy in there like Daniel Steres who had a goal, but
great season last year.
Very experienced USL Pro guy, all league last season. Jack McBean, who certainly could have had maybe a couple of goals, a very good young forward for them. And then you take a look at some of the other guys like Raul Mendiola, Bradford Jameson IV, both homegrown players, both make their professional debuts in this game. Mendiola starting, Jameson coming off the bench. This kind of is a perfect storm for, I think, the way the Galaxy want the Galaxy II to look.
Yeah, now let's talk about a little bit. You talk about how they want the Galaxy II to look. They play like the first team plays. It's a miniature version of that, essentially, because all these guys have come up through the system for the most part. They have brought in some new guys like Asteris, but at the same time, you have a lot of academy players. You have a lot of guys that are familiar with their system. So and then you add in the fact that Bruce Arena's been there for a while, so he has a system in place, and that's how the first team plays. Is how LA Galaxy II is going to play. Is how the academy team is going to play. So there's that consistency coming over. So despite the fact that this is a new team, it's not really a new team because these guys all know each other for the most part. And they've played in a certain style, in a certain fashion for a period of time now.
And obviously having Kurt Arnolfo in there, who has been Bruce Arena's assistant alongside Dave Sarachan.
Coached the reserve team in the past.
And there's that continuity where you have Arnolfo, who appears to be, from an outside perspective, a very good teacher of the game, and from what I've seen, a guy that kind of really is able to build up players' confidence and kind of create some self-belief that this team is going to go out and be able to be very competitive, not just with the Orange County Blues, but with some of the teams that were competing for the championship at the end of last season.
Yeah, and obviously these guys are going to be very motivated. I mean, you have guys on this team that do have quite a number of minutes for the first team already in the past, and so they want to go out there and show that they belong on that first team, that they deserve to be there. So whether they're just on loan or whether they're fully with LA Galaxy II, there's guys that want to make that move. And so we talked about it last year when we started the partnership with MLS, is that motivation for the guys in this league. Obviously there's always been that motivation to move up to the higher level, but now with the partnership starting last year, you have even more eyeballs on you because you have the crossover games, you have the guys on loan, so there's even more attention. And then when you're in an environment like this with LA Galaxy II, it's even more direct relationship between the two of them too, so that incentive and that pressure's there. This is a place there where guys want to be because they're directly in that environment of the first team.
Now, obviously, it was a very positive performance by the Galaxy II. Not quite. There were a few good moments for Orange County, not quite as fluid as I think we might have expected them to see, but first game, early jitters, going on the road in what was a very nice atmosphere provided by Angel City Brigade and the LA Riot squad.
Yep.
out at StubHub Center. Some bright spots. Stephen Okai, I think, was a bright spot for me. Obviously, he had a very good season last year for the Charlotte Eagles, was an integral part of that team, making the USL Pro Championship game. Really great free kick. If you haven't seen the free kick, make sure you go and check out the highlights or check out the full game replay on YouTube, because it's well worth checking out. But he's a guy that I think, as this team begins to mesh, as develops chemistry, I think he's a guy that, along with Gabriel Gonzalez in the center of midfield, and maybe if they get maybe a little more depth at the center back position, he can come up and play alongside Alan Russell to provide kind of a little bit of guile, a little bit of bite in the center of midfield for them, which I felt maybe was a little bit lacking on Saturday.
I agree. I think at times, if you talked about the central defense, and it looked a little 6s and 7s at times in the back as well. Some of those goals, they were really caught out of position. LA Galaxy moved the ball around well, or caught a lucky deflection, and all of a sudden they were exposed. So at the back, they definitely need to get more organized. I mean, look, I think on paper, I think that this team is right up there in quality as far as the LA Galaxy 2 team they played the other day. I think they have a lot of really good players. You talked about Okai, talked about Alan Russell, obviously was one of the better players in the league last season. They have a lot of good players on the side. They brought in some new faces this year. But I think what you'll have to see is that they didn't have quite as much of a preseason as LA Galaxy did. So, and I think that showed the other night. You can tell that LA Galaxy 2 had a little bit more ramp up. They weren't, I wouldn't say mid-season form, but they were definitely more in early season form than as opposed to where I would say that, you know, Orange County looked like they were just still coming out of the preseason a little bit more. So the talent's there, but I think they're going to just need a little bit more seasoning. But again, I think that at the end of the season, as they develop, as they get together, they gel a little bit more, that Orange County is going to be right in the hunt for the playoffs again this year.
Certainly will be. They have a couple of weeks off to kind of foster that chemistry, reorganize, reshape a little bit before their home opener on April the 5th. The Galaxy, they come back, they have another game this Saturday. Before we talk about that, we got the chance to talk with Charlie Rugg, who scored the first goal in franchise history and set them on the way to victory. And that interview will be coming up just after this break. Well, we're very pleased to be joined now by LA Galaxy 2 forward Charlie Rugg. Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you and the entire squad on victory in your inaugural game on Saturday night. What did it mean to be part of that occasion, and certainly for the team to play as well as it did?
Well, it was a pretty special experience for us. We knew it was kind of a historic game for the Galaxy organization. So we really had that in mind going into the game, and I think it translated into the win a little bit. But we were pleased to get that first win in the first game and get a good start to the season.
And speaking of first win, first game, first goal in franchise history, that's got to be a nice little feather in the cap for you.
Yeah, I didn't actually think about that until afterwards. Someone told me, but yeah, that's I guess just a bonus.
I think a lot of people going into the game were wondering how cohesive this team would look, because it's pulling parts from different areas. You've got the guys like Daniel Steres who are signed to USL Pro contracts. You've got guys like yourself who are coming down from the MLS side, and you've got the guys like Jameson Bradford or Raul Mendiola who are making their professional debuts, having come up from the academy. How pleased were you with the way the team's chemistry looked for an opening game?
Well, I think it just shows how impressive the organization is getting this team together so quickly, and it really is like a really talented group of players of all ages too. So I think it says a lot about the organization. They did a great job getting the players that we needed in the right places, the right positions, and everything. And we've been working hard through preseason to get on the same page, get everything right to do well this season.
It seems like there was a good amount of support out there for the team as well. Was that exciting to see?
Yeah, it's always good to see, the Angel City Brigade out there supporting us. You love to see that as players, and that support really goes a long way for us. So I really like the atmosphere out there the first game, and I hope it continues for the rest of the season.
From a management perspective, from a coaching perspective, we've kind of got into what the Galaxy are hoping to get out of this as far as competitive games and giving young players the chance to kind of blood themselves in the professional game before they try and make the step up to MLS. For players like yourself, does it feel like these games have a different atmosphere and maybe a different mentality that's required as opposed to the old MLS Reserve League games that you guys have participated in the last couple of years?
Definitely a different atmosphere, a better atmosphere compared to the reserve games from last year. Last year, personally, I think this league and this team will be helpful for me to get games in a good atmosphere. Whereas last year, it was kind of a year where I was up and down and didn't really get much playing time, battled injuries. So I think this is a good place for players like me to get in kind of a groove and put themselves in a good position to move up.
Is it exciting to be part of a league where you're actually playing for something? I mean, you guys are going to be going out on the road, you're going to be heading to the East Coast, playing teams like Orlando, Charleston, teams that have had a lot of success in this league, not just in the last couple of years, but historically for teams like the Battery or the Richmond Kickers. Does that offer a new challenge for players like yourself?
That's not something that I really think about. I think about more what we're trying to do as a team. Obviously, you take every game as it comes, looking at your opponent and everything. But I'm more concerned with how our team is going to do this year as the pioneering, Galaxy II squad. So that's mostly what I think about.
Now, speaking of every game as it comes, you guys have got a really interesting game, at least to me, this Saturday with the Sacramento Republic. This is their first game. They've got a few names on there that I think some fans will recognize, like Justin Braun, Jake Gleason, Brian Gallego. What are you expecting to see out of the Republic?
Well, from what I've heard, they're going to be a better opponent than what we saw last weekend, but so I know they're gonna have a good team. It's gonna be a little bit more of a challenge, but I think we're all aware of that and we'll be ready for it.
How motivated is the team and the squad overall to make this a successful season and for it to be a championship season in your first year in USL Pro?
Well, we really, as the first Galaxy II, MLS extension team, kind of, we have a lot to prove as a team, so we're really motivated. We know we have our coach Kurt who keeps reminding us of that, and we're all on the same page with that. So I think it looks pretty positive going forward.
How much are we enjoying playing for Kurt?
I like playing for Kurt a lot. He's like one of the coaches from last year that he kind of, I sense that he believes in me a lot. So I know that he'll be good for me personally to be coached by him and learn from him. So I think I can grow a lot from having him as a coach this year. So that's just another benefit to this whole situation for me.
You've scored your first goal for the Galaxy II. Have you set a goal for yourself as to how many you'd like to try and get this season? Are we looking at potentially double digits?
Yeah, I mean, I go into every game hoping with the goal of scoring at least one. So I guess if that's the case, then I just go into I try to score as many goals as we have games, at least. But it's not that easy.
Definitely isn't. Well, Charlie, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it, and best of luck on Saturday. Best of luck for the rest of the season.
All right, thanks for having me, Nicholas.
Obviously very good to hear from Charlie Rugg, and I think what you were saying in the first segment about this being an opportunity for players to prove themselves, and I think what Rugg said about being able to find a rhythm, get in regular minutes, find a rhythm, and which is so important, especially for attackers like him. This is why the partnership and the Galaxy fielding their own team in USL Pro, I think, has so much benefit, not just for the league, for USL Pro and for MLS, but for players like Rugg, who obviously have first team aspirations.
Yeah, I think so. And you talk about getting in those regular minutes, and one thing that I think, if you look at the schedule, and this coming from somebody that made this schedule, the Galaxy have a lot of balance in their schedule this year. It's very nice. It's very evenly spaced out. They have time between a lot of their games, but not too much time. And they have there's a real nice ebb and flow to their whole season. So I think that's going to balance for them well. But again, that's going to get these guys the opportunity to come in and be fresh and be the best player that they can be. Yeah. So it definitely sets up well for LA this season.
Now, they get another test this Saturday against the Sacramento Republic FC. And this is a new expansion franchise that is coming in for its first game. Now, we announced this team, I think, maybe about 12 months ago. They've had a long lead-in time for this season, and from everything that I've seen, and I think everything that people outside the league have seen, this is a group that really seems to be right on top of the ball and potentially could be a contender. They've got a great ownership group led by Warren Smith, great sports ownership experience.
Yep.
They have a terrific fan base. Tower Bridge Battalion looks excellent. They sold a lot of season tickets. It certainly should be a really great atmosphere at all of these games. And at the games, they're going to be playing the bulk of their games at the Cal Expo, which looks like a tremendous facility. This seems to be a club that dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and is going to be competitive from day one.
I think so. You talk about some of the intangibles that they have going for them this season. One, I think the fans, they're going to just absolutely be so impressive from a season ticket holder standpoint. I see the numbers coming in already from their side, and they're going to blow everybody away. I mean, there's going to, the type of numbers that they're getting for season tickets are so impressive. There's just that demand out there, and I had a conversation with their vice president the other day, Joe Wagner, and they were talking about it's not just, the 18 to 35 demographic that we've seen have such success in MLS. They're getting the soccer clubs out. The community is responding as a whole. And again, it goes into this thing where, to kind of push away for a second and talk about the business side, but when you only have one other sports team in town, really, and I should say that there's the AAA baseball team as well. But as far at the major league level, there's that demand for high level soccer there in Sacramento, and the community's responded so well, and they have such a first class front office. They've done just a great job building it up so far. Obviously, they really launched it with the SAC Soccer Day last year, coming in, and then on top of that, they're going to have a great facility in Cal Expo. Obviously, they're going to have to play a couple of games to start up at Hughes. But once they get into Cal Expo, it's going to be absolutely fantastic, and it's going to be a great home for soccer in NoCal for a while.
Certainly some of the pictures that we've seen as to what Cal Expo is going to look like look tremendous. I'm particularly a fan of the bouncy castle. I want to go and play in the bouncy castle at Cal Expo. Please make sure that's part of the facility, Mr. Smith.
I think that's the supporter section, right? The bouncy castle.
Yeah. Now, that being said, on the field, this is a team that looks very well put together as well. You've got Preki, a very experienced head coach, a former MLS Coach of the Year. And there's a lot of talent out there in California that you can build a squad with. He's reached into his past. He's brought in guys like Justin Braun, also brought in a recent MLS player in Gilberto, and they've also got some good loanees, some solid prospects from my experience of seeing them play, in guys like Jake Gleason, who was tremendous a few years ago for the Timbers U23s when they won the PDL championship. He's a homegrown player and definitely seems to be on the path to be the heir apparent to Donovan Ricketts up in Portland. Same thing for Brian Gallego. He's a homegrown signing for the Timbers. Certainly seems to have first team potential. This is a great opportunity for those guys to kind of get into Sacramento, get into a great environment, and build a winning franchise.
Yeah, obviously they have that rare sort of double affiliation for this year where they can pull on some talent from both San Jose and Portland, and it won't be a scenario there where you have 4 guys from each team. You'll have a couple from each team, but some of the guys we talked about, a guy like Jake Gleason, who was so great in PDL and has had a little, a few minutes to shine too in MLS since he came on board. But he's a big guy, obviously from New Zealand. And I think he'll be an impact player between the pipes for him, which is so important to have that steady presence back there.
Definitely.
And then we talk about some of the other players. You get an experienced guy like Justin Braun coming in, huge for the team. He's been around, been with some winning sides in MLS, had an impact and score some goals. So they have some players coming in that I think could really make the difference. And again, we go back to talk about new teams this year. We just talked about LA before. Sacramento, it's not going to be your average new team. I think that they have the talent coming in to overcome a lot of those traditional first-year bumps. Obviously, you're still going to have some obstacles in the fact that you have to come together as a team, but they have been training for a while. So I think it's going to be a successful year. It's going to be really competitive with some of those teams out west.
What's really interesting to me is to see the chemistry that maybe Justin Braun and Rodrigo Lopez, who was so good last year for Orange County, was finished second in USL PRO in assists and was the first signing for the Republic. If those two develop chemistry, you're going to see this team entertain, score some goals, and really be a fun team to watch, I think.
I think so too. They bring in a little bit of USL Pro experience with some MLS experience. They don't have too many guys in there which you would call just completely green. Everybody out on their team has played at some level with some level of experience, even if it's just with an MLS side. So it's an impressive opening foray into the league with the lineup that they have.
Well, to learn a little bit more about how things are coming together in Sacramento's camp ahead of Saturday's opener, we got the chance to talk with Justin Braun, and that interview will be coming up just after this break. Well, we're very pleased to be joined now by Justin Braun of Sacramento Republic FC. Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
This has got to be a really exciting week for you guys, building up to the first game in club history. What's the atmosphere like in the camp right now?
It's been good. I think all the guys are very positive. We've been working hard over this past month, and I think everyone's kind of itching to get on that field and get that first game under our belt, not just play against each other. So we're looking forward to the challenge this weekend.
What does it mean to you in particular? You've been reunited with one of your former coaches in Preki. You've got a chance to really establish something special up in Northern California. It's got to feel like a big opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, over the past few years in the MLS for me has been a bit of a struggle, so I'm looking to kind of come here and reestablish myself and help this team get put on the map. And this organization has been great so far. The city's been behind the team, so I'm definitely excited to play in front of the fans here.
When did Sacramento reach out to you to suggest maybe this would be a good opportunity for you?
Yeah, I mean, once the season was done, Preki and I kind of stayed in touch a little bit and just had talks throughout the off season, and then finally decided that this would kind of be the best situation for myself playing for him again. And it's kind of worked out well, and I'm happy to be here.
How has preseason gone?
It's been good. I mean, anytime you get a new group together, it's going to take some time to gel, but I think things are coming together. We've had some good results, also some not so good results, but that's something we can learn on. I think we have a young group, so it's going to take some time, but we can only go up from here. We know the potential that we have in this group, and we're striving to bring that every week.
As an expansion team, there is going to be a certain amount of a learning curve. As far as how far along do you think that curve you are right now as you get ready for your first regular season game?
Yeah, I think this team's prepared. I think the coaching staff here has done a good job of bringing the group along. Like I said, the players that are here have been very committed over this past month, and we've been putting all we have on the training pitch each day. And I think obviously there's still room to grow. There's a lot of room to grow, and that will come as the season goes on. But I think we're extremely prepared for this coming weekend.
Now, obviously, you guys have been working hard on the field, but the feeling that we've seen from around the club, the way that Warren Smith's led the ownership group, the great news that you guys got as far as getting a proper home in Cal Expo, what's the feeling as far as the club is concerned from the front office to the fans about the direction that this team's heading in?
I think everyone's very excited. I mean, the front office has been putting lots of time and effort into getting those ticket sales up, bringing fans out, getting involved in the community, kind of make the fans feel like they're part of this club going forward. I think it really couldn't be done much better, especially with getting that stadium security is going to be huge for not only the team, but to give the fans a good place to come out and cheer us on and enjoy the night.
Now you guys are
it'll be
playing.
exciting for them.
You guys are playing the Galaxy II this Saturday. Did you get a chance to see their opening game on Saturday or watch the archive yet?
No, I haven't, but I'm sure the coaches will go over some film this coming week, and we'll take a look at that and go into the weekend very prepared.
Is it interesting for you guys to compare where you each are with? I mean, they're technically an expansion franchise, although obviously a lot of their players have been part of the Galaxy family for a while. In comparison to where you guys are as an expansion franchise, is it going to be interesting to use them as a yardstick for where you guys have reached this point?
I don't really think so. I think we're just kind of focused on what our group's going to do and what our game plan's going to be, and the way we're going to go out and play. We don't really want to let other teams dictate what we're going to do on the field. And I think as far as the club goes, I think, like we said earlier, that this organization is doing all the right things moving forward, and everything seems to be running smoothly so far.
Now, we obviously have some players such as yourself, such as Rodrigo Lopez, who had a great season last year for the Orange County Blues in USL Pro, and Gilberto, formerly of the Philadelphia Union, on the squad. But who are some of the young players that we should be keeping an eye out for this Saturday?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of good young guys. One guy that's done well this preseason is Max Alvarez. I think he went to Sacramento State here. I think he's gonna come a long way and help this team a lot this season. We've got two good center backs in Mickey Daly and Harrison. I mean, there's I could go on and on about guys that have done well and shown themselves. We got a good group of guys, and these young guys are learning fast, and they're going to help this team tremendously as the season goes on.
What's the biggest thing you're hoping to offer this team this season?
You know, the way I've played, kind of carried myself in my career, just go out in the field and do whatever I can to help the team win. That's the most important thing on the day is getting three points. I mean, obviously as a forward, it's always good to bring the goals, but if there's a stretch where the goals aren't coming and the team's winning, I'll be just as happy doing that and going to the field and putting the work in each game.
Is there an expectation? Has the team set an expectation for what it wants to accomplish this season?
I mean, I think the bar has been set very high within the group. We know what we're capable of, and we're playing at our best. It's just going to be a matter of bringing that consistency each week. But, you know, obviously we're looking first start out with making the playoffs. And then once you kind of get into that, it's kind of anyone's game from there. So I think we have all the potential in the world to go as far as we want with this group.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it, and best of luck this Saturday night against the Galaxy II.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Now, the Republic kick off this Saturday against the LA Galaxy II out at StubHub Center Track and Field Stadium. Definitely one to look forward to. But we should take a quick look back on last Saturday, because there was another game that we haven't covered yet between the Charleston Battery and Orlando City that was a very, very entertaining curtain raiser to the USL Pro season. Finished in a 1-1 draw. Mamadou Diouf, on loan from the Vancouver Whitecaps, scores the opener. Austin Deleuze, a guy with a lot of experience, brought in potentially, maybe be part of Orlando's MLS squad next year, grabs the equalizer. This was a fun game to watch.
Yeah.
Great atmosphere at Blackboard Stadium. Great to see the travelling Orlando support. Good to see the regiment out in pretty good force as well for the Battery fans. What was your overall takeaway from what you saw from both sides?
Yeah, I actually just watched this game for the second time today. I had watched it, caught most of it on Saturday night, and then I watched it again today. And it was definitely, we've had some really exciting games over the last few years from Orlando and Charleston. I'm thinking about that 2 seasons ago where Orlando had a really crazy comeback at the end.
Definitely was. I believe Ian Fuller grabbed a stoppage time winner.
Yeah.
Charleston. I think Charleston was 1-0 up in that, and Orlando scored twice, maybe in the last 5 minutes plus stoppage time to grab a 2-1 win.
They had some exciting ones last year as well. I'm thinking of the leg at Orlando last year. I remember being at that game, and that was a fantastic affair as well. But again, it goes back. They've had some classic matchups. These two teams have won the last 4 championships in USL. Just really, really fun kind of back and forth game. For me, looking at it, again, I could tell that it definitely wasn't, when I talked about those other games a minute ago, those are games that happened mid-season. If you replayed them all blind, I can tell you that this is definitely the beginning of the season. I think that both teams would like to have a few things back. Some people were out of position defensively, still getting a little organized in there. I'm sure Gallardo would love to have another look at that first goal again. there's a few things in there I'm sure some of the teams would like to have back, but there's no doubting that both of these teams are, in their ability to go forward and ability to score this year, that they're going to be dangerous. And I think what's even more telling is, look, you expect a certain level with Orlando at this point. Even though they've brought in a lot of new faces this year, you're still expecting to come out how how Adrian likes them to play, and they're going to play that way, and they're going to score goals. But for me, seeing that impact for the guys on loan from Vancouver is really huge for Charleston as well.
It was definitely interesting to see how the Vancouver players were incorporated into the lineup. Obviously, there weren't many in the starting lineup, which was interesting to me. But you have Omar Salgado comes off the bench.
Yep.
You have Juve comes on, makes an immediate impact with his goal as those two link up to score the first goal of the USL Pro season. As time goes on, I think we're going to see more of these guys incorporated into the lineup. I think Aminu Abdallah made his debut for the Battery, and he got the opportunity to play. Wouldn't surprise me to see a guy like Andre Lewis get the chance to play this weekend as they host Richmond. So as things move on here, we're definitely going to see more and more of these guys get incorporated in. And I think that's just going to raise the level of the Battery's play, because when you have a guy who is as technically talented, as physically talented as Omar Salgado, that's a guy that could have a defining presence on the Battery's season.
And that's what he is. He's a presence. You talked about technically, but physically as well. He could be that guy for them this year.
The guy that really stood out to me a little bit for Orlando was Darwin Serran, and he's played very well in the preseason. He's obviously kind of being that focal hub, as it were, in the attacking third. There was so much that was going through him. He was making a lot of good passes, and I think Orlando might consider themselves a little bit unlucky, because Odisnell Cooper, some people seemed like they were still maybe coming out of preseason. Odisnell Cooper looked like he was in mid-season form. There were some very, very good saves there to keep the game 1-1, especially late on.
Yeah, Charleston always managed to find a few good Cuban players, right? And they definitely succeeded in that last year with Cordovez and Cooper. And Cooper had a strong performance, I thought, this weekend. He was obviously really fantastic last year as well, first year in the league. He looked in form. It was good. There wasn't obviously much he could do on the goal that Orlando did score. And then you go back and you talk about Darwin Serra for Orlando, and good first game for him. Obviously, he's an international player. He wants to come in and show what he has to take it here and then take it to the next level. He knows he's going to be on board next season too. Yeah. So, fantastic start for him. They have some really dangerous players, Orlando, this year. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the rest of the league this year with some of the talent they have again. But, as we saw this weekend, I think that there's a lot of teams that will be up for the task.
Now, you mentioned the two of the Cuban players there that the Battery have. I've heard from the people that are up in Charleston that keep an eye on Michael Chang this year, because he was a guy that really struggled with injury last year, but he seems to have worked his way back to full fitness. People were liking what they were seeing out of him in preseason. He could be a guy that really catches the eye, maybe as early as this week, as they host the Richmond Kickers in what is historically one of the best rivalries in USL history. This is, I think, their 23rd season, I want to say, going up against one another, and that is the opening game on Saturday night, 7:30 kickoff on YouTube. This has the potential to be an absolute classic, because these two teams are going to want to go out and attack each other, just as they always do. It should be a really entertaining contest.
Yeah, you talk about Chang. Obviously, it's important for Charleston to really kind of keep that talent coming in. They have a long history of bringing guys in and then guys succeeding at a high level. Go back to somebody like Ozzy Alonso or even Mike Azira, who also is with Seattle now and made his debut, I believe, this weekend, right?
Yeah, made his debut this past Sunday against Montreal.
So it's obviously important for them to come in, have new faces, step up, and then contribute to a rivalry like they have with Richmond. And it's going to be huge. I mean, Richmond was so fantastic last season. Obviously, very disappointing way for them to go out at the end of last year, given that the season they had. So they're going to come in hungry. They're going to return a lot of the lineup they have. They're going to see some familiar faces. We just saw Michael Seaton today coming back to them. So they're going to have some familiar faces coming back to them from DC. But obviously they have to replace some of those influential players that were there last year that aren't going to, figure out their goalkeeper situation this year. And then obviously they had a fantastic loan from blanking on his name there, from Houston.
Brian Ownby
last year in the midfield. So replacing those pieces, but it's going to be a little bit of a shift this year, and I believe Joseph Nguyen is gone too, right?
Joseph Nguyen is with the Riverhounds now, and we'll talk about him in a moment when we get to the Pittsburgh-Orlando game. But I really like some of the moves that Richmond did to make those replacements, where you bring in a guy like George Davis from Orange County, who was all-league last year. Really exciting threat down the flanks, going to provide a lot of good service for guys like Mike Season, for Matt Delicat if he's back. He's been playing for most of the preseason. I think they're probably working to get him on the roster right now ahead of their opener. If he comes back, that's a huge impact. But for me, the guy that Seaton is the guy for me. I got to talk with him this preseason. He certainly said at that point he would welcome a return to Richmond, a return to getting the opportunity to play regular minutes week in and week out. And this guy has gotten bigger and stronger. He had 5 goals this time last year. Went off, made his debut for the Jamaican national team in the off season late last year. This guy, I think, is a guy that if he plays the entire season in Richmond, we could definitely be looking at double-digit goals for him.
I completely agree. He's big, he's physical, he can come in and score goals, and he showed it last year, obviously.
And quick.
Yeah.
He's so quick.
Well, and he's young, too. Was he like 18 or something like that? 18 or 19?
I believe he's 8. I believe he is going to turn 18 in May.
In May,
I remember his goal last season when he was 16 when he signed with DC as a homegrown player. His goal was to score his first professional goal by the age of 17. Well, he accomplished that in his first game against the Wilmington Hammerheads last year. Now that he's about to turn 18, I think the goal for him certainly, it wouldn't surprise me to be double-digit goals in USL Pro this season.
No, I agree, and I couldn't think of anything that DC would want more than him to develop really this year and turn into. I mean, I know the prototype model is Dom Dwyer now. I'm not saying that he's going to be that. Obviously, Dom had a few more years on him and a little bit more college experience than Michael did. At that same time, he's got a lot of tools that you could even argue that Dom might not have as far as the size and things like that. So, not that Dom isn't a strong guy, but he has a lot of tools that he can really bring, and I think he could be effective this year for them.
Another guy that would like to see double-digit goals, Lee Calishaw.
Look, again, with the nature of this league, you're going to have new faces in every year, and Lee's a guy who's consistently shown that he can take his lineup, keep a lot of his core, but adjust to what he has and make it effective. So, a lot of confidence in Lee that it's going to be another successful year for the Kickers.
Now, you mentioned that Joseph Nguyen did move on from the Kickers. He headed over to Pittsburgh, and they head down for Orlando's final home opener in USL Pro this Saturday night. Also at 7:30 at a beautiful stadium on the Disney's ESPN Wide World of Sports. Got to go there relatively frequently over the course of the preseason, go see some games out there, and definitely going to be a terrific atmosphere this Saturday night. Nguyen, though, is just one of a few new faces that the club has invested in to kind of boost the squad, and they've held on to some really good pieces. You've got Matt Dahlman coming back, reigning MVP Jose Angulo, Johnny Arteaga, Andrew Marshall, and then you add into that an Nguyen, a Collins John, formerly of Fulham and the Chicago Fire. These are pieces that make a very, very strong squad. Pittsburgh, they had 2 interesting experiences in Orlando last season. They went down there in the regular season. They won 1-0. They broke Orlando's regular season home winning streak as a result. Then they came down for the playoffs, and Orlando just jumped them, scored twice in the first 5 minutes, ended up winning 5-0. I think there's motivation for Pittsburgh here to kind of wash that game out of their memory a little bit. I think this is going to be a real end-to-end game, because we've seen from the preseason and we've seen from past seasons, these teams want to go out and attack and play entertaining soccer. Yeah,
there was definitely no shortage of that last year from Pittsburgh as well. For me, they scored goals last year. They retained a lot of their key players. We talked about some of the big guys that they brought in. For me, it's still going to be about that defense in the back and whether they can hold firm. And that's what you're going to need against Orlando, because they're going to come at you in waves and droves. So coming out, and this will be a good early test for them to see where they are. Obviously, it's early in the season. It's first game of the year. But for me, that'll be the key, is if they can hold. I'm not saying that they all have to sit, 11 men behind the ball, but they definitely need to keep their shape. Otherwise, they're going to be very exposed.
It's interesting. Some of these early season matchups that we have the Galaxy against Sacramento this Saturday. We have Richmond against Charleston. We have Pittsburgh against Orlando, two teams we're expecting to see there or thereabouts at the end. There are some real opportunities here for kind of flags to be driven into the ground and establishing a benchmark, establishing a baseline for where this club stands in the USL Pro hierarchy. It's really, really fascinating to see.
I agree. Obviously, there was a big jump last year, and I should go back and counter to my other point, too. I think Orlando should be just as alert. Obviously, they have one more game under their belt, but we have seen in the past that Orlando can be exposed at the back, and there was a few shaky moments against Charleston the other day, too.
Yep.
So I would say equally just for them that with the talent that Pittsburgh has and their attacking abilities, that they should be just as wary with Pittsburgh going forward. But going back to your point about the hierarchy, look, there's definitely been a shift. We'll talk about Dayton in a second, too, in their game this weekend. But with some of the advances that teams made last year, obviously the status quo got shaken up a little bit last year with where Wilmington was and where Rochester finished at the end of last season. So, I in my opinion, the league is going to be ultra competitive again this year. There's no way you can look at the table and say, okay, these will be the bottom 4 teams or something like that. There's no way you can do it.
It's really, really hard to call.
Yeah, because there's just so many unknowns. I mean, if I had said to you last year that Rochester, was going to finish where they finished, or that, Orange County or somebody else was going to be where they were, it would have been so difficult to predict at the beginning of the season. And I think it's the same way this year. It's really, really difficult to sit down and connect all the pieces.
Definitely appears that way. Now, you mentioned Dayton. We have these 3 games on Saturday, but Dayton enters the fray on Sunday evening. They travel to face the New York Red Bulls reserves at Red Bull Arena. That game, in addition to the USL Pro games, the games being hosted at USL Pro venues, will also be streamed live on YouTube, so you can tune in for that on Sunday evening at 6 p.m. I'm intrigued by this Dayton squad. Yep. There is a lot of good returning pieces. You've got a goalkeeper who has been very consistent in Matt Williams coming back for his 3rd season with the club. You've got guys like Joel DeLass, Eli Garner, who have been really solid players for the last couple of years for this team. But then you look at some of the players that they've brought in, and there's some very entertaining young talent, not just that the club has brought in, but you look at a Ryan Finley, a Kevin George, some of these guys that they're getting on loan thanks to their partnership with the Columbus Crew. This is a team that I think there might be the perception out there that what Dayton accomplished last year might have been a little bit of a fluke. Yeah. And I think teams should underestimate them at their peril, because I think this team's going to be very dangerous. I think Finley's a guy that could come in, given the experience that he has, given the goal-scoring record that he has particularly in college soccer, and do something similar to what Dom Dwyer did last year.
I think so. I mean, obviously, if it's any indication for how Columbus has played this year, that would bode well for them too.
Absolutely.
But no, I agree with you. I think you underestimate them at your peril. If you think that last year was a fluke, then you weren't watching Dayton all season. Yeah. Because they played fantastic soccer. Obviously, they came in and kept it real Dutch, played a 4-3-3, but the way that they pushed the ball, how they moved it up the wings, they played a good 4-3-3, and I think that Sid will keep doing that well. Coach Sid Van Drunen will do it well again this season for the team. They are going to miss a couple guys that aren't coming back, like a Gibson Bardsley. Yeah. Schwartz and Druber, I don't believe, is back this year. Right. So they're going to miss a couple of those guys. At the same time, they brought in a lot of exciting young guys, and they didn't have that Columbus partnership last year.
So this is something that's going to boost the club further. Yeah. This is a club that has always had a plan. Yep. And it seems as though that plan, as it enters years 4, is exactly where they want it to be. Yep. Having made the playoffs last season, having given Richmond a very good game in the quarterfinals last season, this is a team that is primed to compete for a playoff spot and maybe a higher playoff spot than some people might think as they kick this season off.
And it's a club with big aspirations just beyond that as well. I mean, obviously they're going to open up a couple games in their previous facility at Beaver Creek, but they're going to be switching into DOC Stadium after that, which is going to be a fantastic home for them, just down the road from downtown Dayton. It's going to be no football lines. It's supposed to have covered seats, and they're going to be there for the majority of the season and then into next year as well. And I know they have ambitions as well to build their own soccer-specific stadium, and that's looking very promising for them. So there's a lot of good things that are going to happen for Dayton, I think, going forward. And it's part of that plan that they've had since day one. Mike Mossel and some of the ownership group, which have done a fantastic job.
Absolutely. Well, that game is on tap for Sunday evening at 6 o'clock. Reminder, Saturday, 7:30 kickoffs. We have Orlando City hosting the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Charleston Battery hosting the Richmond Kickers, and then at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, we have the LA Galaxy II hosting Sacramento Republic. We hope you'll join us for all of those games on YouTube. We hope you join us on Friday as we take a look ahead to the weekend's action in the USL Pro Weekend Preview. David, any final comments? Any players you think we should be keeping an eye on this weekend?
Man, who to look? Well, I think it goes back. We talked so much about Seton. I think it's going to be a huge weekend for him. I'd like to come out and see him get a start and see what he could do this weekend. That'll be huge. He's my guy to watch this weekend. I'm sorry if I took it. I'm sorry if he was yours.
Absolutely not. Actually, my guy to watch is Colin Falvey for the Charleston Battery.
Yeah.
He was suspended last week, and he means so much to that Battery backline. I thought Sean Ferguson had an excellent game at centre-back, and so that partnership potentially being reunited to go up against what is a very dangerous kickers attack is going to be very important for the Battery to try and contain that, make sure that they keep the defensive solidity that they showed against Orlando.
Definitely.
Well, thank you, David, for taking the time to join me today. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. We hope you join us again this time next week. Thank you, producer Ian, for putting all of this together. And we hope you enjoy all of this weekend's action. Until this time next week, bye for now.